Hey, it's Nicole. Welcome back to the Serial Entrepreneur Show. So excited to have you listening in and to introduce you to today's guest, Taylor Willingham, founder of Willingham Law Firm. Yeah, that's right. There's another attorney on the show today. I'm a little nervous, but here we go. As a dedicated estate planning, probate, and elder law attorney, his practice is dedicated to ensuring clients' retirement is secure, that their assets are protected, and that their desires are executed upon they're incapacitated or upon their passing. Life, death, and taxes, right? Those are some of the topics that we're going to cover here today, folks.
Hey, if you're an entrepreneur who usually fast forwards intros just like this one, this is the podcast for you.
Hey, just a reminder, our show is brought to you by SmartCookie Media, where we believe data tells a story, and not just any story, your business story. As a subscriber to the show or as a client, you'll get insights on profitable, data-driven marketing strategies that work for you and your business, your industry, not some cookie cutter trends. No, ideas that are led by your customer data so you know they'll work for you. Connect with me on LinkedIn or Instagram to learn more. Everything's in the show notes. Now, let's get back to the show. Welcome to the show, Taylor.
Thank you for having me.
Well, Matt, let's just say it. You're excited to have him here. Let me jump in with at least the first question.
Okay. I'll let you
Taylor,
talk at least for the first 5 seconds of the show and go, Nicole. Here's your chance.
Thank you. Taylor, how would you finish this sentence? You know you're an entrepreneur when?
You know you're an entrepreneur when you're starting a business and then you're thinking about starting another one at the same time. I think that's like what I constantly get accused of is like, you're halfway through this project and then all of a sudden you're like, but now I have another idea. I'm going to go do this thing.
Yes.
So I think of entrepreneurs as creators. We love to create and we fall in love with the creation process of things.
You sharing all of that story right there, that little bit of intro tells me you're not like the typical attorney. You are like my buddy here that I've known since undergrad. You're wired a little bit different. So is there a story there? Something that maybe led you to entrepreneurship, but you still chose the law degree? I know you're an author of a book we're going to talk about. So tell me, what makes you tick?
So I've actually not had that many actual jobs with people like bosses. So when I was in law school, that's where I started my officially first job. And that was in real estate. I was sitting in law class one day and I see one of the kids in my law school just get up and he leaves right in the middle of class. I'm like, why is he leaving? So I just followed him out the door. I'm like, what are you doing? He's like, oh, come with me. Come with me. We get in his car. We drive down a street and he goes, you can buy this house for $20,000. And I'm like, you kidding me? He goes, no. I mean, it was a piece of junk, but it was right across the street from the school. And he goes, you can put 3 students in there, charge them all $500 a month, and I'm started doing the math in my head. I'm like, hey, this makes sense. And I go, that's great, but I don't have $20,000. Now, this is probably the part that I shouldn't say. This was back in 2006.
Mm-hmm.
He goes, that's no problem. You just tell them you make some amount of money and they'll give you a loan. And
I was a mortgage officer in those times. So yeah, we know all about those loans. Yeah.
Was the term claims stated, or something like that?
No doc. Stated income.
Stated income. That's what it was. Yeah, exactly.
Okay. So you guys understand. So that's where I started my first business, was buying and selling houses. We called it the Pit. It was this area of old homes that were just trashed and junky that people didn't want. And we bought them like hotcakes and I enjoyed it very much.
Did you see anything else before that in your life growing up as a kid? Any entrepreneurs in your family? Something that gave you the confidence to say like, yeah, I can do that?
I wasn't afraid to sell. So for some reason, going out there and people rejecting me wasn't that big of a deal. I was always in the sales position somehow. And so that really made it easy for me to go, oh yeah, I can just go out and do this on my own. Also, I grew up very poor, so that helped out a lot. I was okay with having nothing. I lived pretty much up to that point with nothing. So like, it means nothing to me that no one's going to be paying me or no money's going to be coming in. I'll figure out how to survive. And I also had a job at the time, of course. I made $10 an hour working as a law clerk for an attorney. I see people try to do this all the time where they make a lot of money and then they build up their life structure around that income. And then they want to jump off and start their own business. And it's that hard reality change of when you start something, money just doesn't flow in, unless you're buying something that already has that income flow coming in. So that part was easier for me, but there are difficulties of the way I did it.
So tell me about this other kid who just jumped up in the middle of law school, because that is a random thing in law school. If you
I want to
make
give
it
a shout out to him.
Yeah, no
Yeah.
kidding. Like, I'm certain, like saying to myself, so was he a real estate agent? Was he someone doing the same thing you were doing? Did you become a partner with, where did this go, this relationship?
I consider him the most interesting man alive. He's already retired, actually. He went and got his real estate license when he was in law school, but he had gone to Texas Tech for the reason that he knew about this community of cheap homes. He was like, oh, I want to be a lawyer. And then he looked for law schools that had these poor areas of homes by the law school so he could buy houses. He had, I guess, figured this out when he was an undergrad that, oh, yeah, people will put 3 boys in a house and you can get the Dallas family to guarantee to fix anything in the property. So he had this all figured out before he even showed up. He was a smart guy. We did that together. Well, I mean, I did my own, he did his own. And then law school was ending for me. I was a year older than him in law school. And I said, well, I'm going to go start my own law firm. And he's like, why? Like, just keep buying these houses. Like, what are you doing? And I'm like, no, I got a law degree. So I got to go be a lawyer now. And he's like, no, you don't. You can just do this. He kept doing the law thing. And he's now not working and retired because he owns a lot of real estate.
He kept doing the real estate thing.
Yeah, he became a lawyer too, but
Okay.
really he got a job from someone to pay him a paycheck to cover his bills while he was doing this on the side. I don't know if you guys have heard of, he called them white letters. He just keeps sending out letters to a community based upon a certain criteria that he had. And
Yeah.
then you get 1 or 2 calls a month. And then he'd walk in and he'd
Yeah.
go, hey, I'll buy it for this price. And he kept doing that until he got to around 100 homes. And then he started buying apartment complexes. So
Yep.
Wild.
Yeah. Wow. So then obviously, that gave you some confidence, going back to Nicole's original question, you know what I mean, to see that this guy's doing it already in law school. So where do you go from there? How do we get to what you own today?
Yeah. So when I was in law school, I wanted to be an estate planning probate attorney, what I do now. I worked for an attorney that did that and financial advising. And he said, pick a place. I'll run the financial planning part of this. You just run the estate planning part. We'll have a combination together. Well, I graduated in 2009, which is not the best year for financial advising or trying to find a law job. And so when I graduated, I still remember this. It was the week before I was about to take the bar. I get a phone call going, hey, I know you have an apartment out there already picked out. I know we kind of had a place that you're going to go into, but I'm out because half my clients have left. I can't really afford to open up another office.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I had a place picked out. And so I was like, well, I got to move here. So I moved here to McKinney, Texas. And then my first law job, I worked for about 2 months, but they were paying me $10 an hour because no one would hire anybody. It was more out of charity. The guy took me, I think he felt bad for me because I couldn't practice law because I didn't have a law license. You have to wait like 4 months to get your law license. He let me learn a little bit in his firm, but then ultimately I'm like, I can just make more money on my own. So they call it hang out your shingle. And
Yeah.
still remember I set up my whole office and then I sat down and I just went, all right, what do I do now? Like,
Are they coming?
Yeah.
They're coming in the door? Yeah.
Exactly.
I got to go find.
I got a nice desk. I bought the computer. I've got all the things. All right.
Exactly.
Something.
I had all the things. I just didn't have a client yet.
I
So-
took all 9 weeks of law office management, and I don't remember them telling me about building out my marketing funnel or how to attract clients. I remember they reiterated, don't commingle the funds. I remember that a lot. I don't remember sales and marketing being covered really clearly in that law office practice or law office management,
So I didn't have any money. So I actually funded my law firms off credit cards. That's how I lived.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Hey,
Funded
you're in
everything.
good company. So did, oh my gosh, what's his name? Silent Bob. What's his name? Clerks.
Oh,
That's how
yeah.
he funded Clerks. The
Yeah.
whole first movie, he just took out credit cards.
Oh
You're in
yeah.
good
I mean, it
company.
was great. And
Yeah.
I just kept racking up the debt. The first thing that I found business in, because I just took anything. I was like, I want to be a estate planning attorney, but no one's going to walk into a kid that just graduated law school and do their estate planning with them. So I found real estate was the area that there was stuff happening and I understood it very well. So I started doing real estate law. And I started suing mainly mortgage companies and title companies because of all the different like fraudulent activity that was
Right.
done back then.
The housing
And so-
crisis, basically, the ripple effect of the housing crisis of 08. We
Of those
saw.
stated loans and those stated appraisals and those
Yeah, exactly. Those guys who
stated
just basically went
houses
out and got a loan for nothing. Yeah.
of just land. Yeah.
Yes.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yes.
Uh-huh.
As I was going through that process, I was able to generate enough money to keep things going. But of course, these people couldn't pay their mortgages. So they really didn't have a lot of money to pay me. So that was my biggest issue. And so I had to work out deals all the time with them. I still have probably $500,000 worth of bills from that time period that no one's ever paid. But, it got me by for the time. And in that process, one day I was deposing one of the head people of Chicago Title, and he's like, "Do you want to be a fee attorney?" I'm like, "What is a fee attorney?" He goes, "Well, in Texas, you can, through us, have your own title company." And I was like, "All right, well, this sounds interesting, but more important, does it make money?" That was my biggest question that I had, because I was like, I'm tired of not making that much money. And he goes, "It can make really good money." And so I was like, great. Yes, I'm interested. At the time, I had a friend that just graduated law school, and I came back and I said, "Hey, you're going to be a fee attorney." And so that's how my title company got started. And then, of course, I continued with real estate. So I still have my real estate company, and, it owns my building that I have my office in and different things like that, because I want to try to feed off of the things that I do. And I started about 4 years ago developing my own software, because I could never find a CRM system that really worked good for attorneys. I was going from CRM system to CRM system. And my biggest problem is they were just making the situation too complicated for me as an attorney. I was tired of just sitting there entering data into my CRM system all day long. And then I also could see the reality of realizing, hey, my industry's changing a lot, and I got to figure out a way to accommodate this change in technology that's happening.
What is the software?
EP firms. It's hanging on by its last thread, mainly because I realized when AI came out, I'm like, oh, this is going to eat me. Like, somebody's going to come along with a ton of money and be able to implement AI faster than I can into a CRM system, and everybody's going to go to that system.
Can you expound upon that? I'd love to know what your take is on where software is going and how it's related to AI.
Well, I had a girl in my office just a couple months ago, and she was telling me how she wants to go become a paralegal. And I just flat out told her, I'm never hiring a paralegal again. And she goes, "Why?" And I go, "Because I can go to this AI and give it an assignment, and it can give me back anything better than I've ever received from a paralegal instantaneously." I don't want to destroy everybody's hopes here, but I'm like, this is the reality. The reality is, I look at this thing like, it's not perfect. I have to edit it. I have to put together, but it gets me to the point where I need it, so I don't have to spend hours and hours putting something together. And it's only been out for about 1.5 years. And so I say, if it's already taking those jobs, there isn't going to be very much time before it's going to be taking my job.
Mhm.
And that reality hit me very hard over the last couple months, because it's like, it can't produce long form content that I do a lot of the time for things. It's not there yet. But I'd have to be an idiot to not think that this is absolutely going to take transactional work mostly away from attorneys.
Yep.
And so a big part of my push to my staff was, we have to go back to litigation. And if I want to continue to have a job, the only way I'm really going to have a job is in an area that AI can't go into, and that's courtrooms. It's amazing to me how fast things are changing, but I'm not going to escape this wave that's coming.
How'd that have an impact on the software itself?
Well, this was a mistake I made. So let's get to mistakes entrepreneurs make.
Okay.
Let's do it.
I see it coming out, and instead of going, oh, this is going to make my programmers so much more efficient, I saw it as, oh, these big companies are just going to be able to come in and integrate all this so much faster. I'll never keep up. So I just basically looked at my programmers and said, hey guys, I don't want to keep you guys on board here, and then this thing just tank me, and then you guys are screwed. I'm going to pay you for a while so you guys can go find jobs.
Mhm.
I know little program, very little. But then, like, I always happen to fix things because I don't have programmers anymore, so I have to do it. And then all of a sudden I started entering it into, ChatGPT 3.5 then, and it gave me the code instantaneously. And at that moment I realized, oh, I pulled the plug right at the wrong time. That wasn't the moment to let off the gas. That was, I should go all in on this, because, I could never afford the big guys. You need somebody with 20 years experience and wants, $500,000 to $1 million a year. I can't afford that guy. But my guys, almost with this birth of this new technology, would have had that ability, and I took it away. A lot of times being an entrepreneur, it's fear that always ruins you. When you get scared, that's when you make all the bad decisions. You got to know when to pull the plug on something, and that's usually data driven.
I think sometimes Nicole and I have had this discussion about me. She says, law school kind of changed a little bit how my brain works. And it does. I mean, it's socialization. They're doing things to you, and, you don't even know it.
You're one more allegedly in just a random everyday conversation. I'm like, I mean, I like Law and Order for sure, but
Kills me.
It helped us develop the ability to strategize and think 15 steps ahead and think about, what's the outcome? You spoke about litigation. You don't ever ask a question that you don't know what the potential outcome or answers could be to that question. And so it's this idea of gas brake. You're full of the metal gas and all of a sudden reestablish brake. How you just phrased it was a prime example of what I should have done was let off the brake, go all in on gas. And if someday the market changes, the need for transactional attorneys change, whatever the uncontrollables are, I would have cashed my check for 5 to 10 years at least, probably is what you're seeing.
Yeah, because I didn't understand what a tool it would have been for what I had.
Right.
Because most of my programmers' days were just sitting there hacking away, trying to figure out like something's not working, and this solves their problem instantaneously. Like now, instead of having my 3 programmers that I had, it had basically been like quadrupling my programmers overnight at the same cost. It's the hard part when you look back, you're like, dang it, man, I pulled the plug too soon on that. But also the realization of I'm a lawyer, I have a title company, I have this business, and now I have this programming business. You stretch yourself too thin and nothing is working well. That was the other issue that I was having, is realizing that I'm doing too many things instead of focusing on the things that I need to get better at.
I'd love to hear how you advise entrepreneurs, because certainly they want to retire, at least some of us, maybe from the one project or the one business, but they want to have secure assets. They want to make sure that they pass on a few things to the next generation. So let's talk a little bit about the one thing you haven't mentioned. You even have a book. You have a few books, Taylor, but the one that we're going to talk about today is Will Trust. Do I need a will or a trust? I think that is such a great question. Fantastic book title, because it's on a lot of people's minds when they finally admit they need to talk about it.
Yeah, so I always get that question. Do I need a will or trust? Which is not the correct thing. You always need a will. We always create a will because that's one of those foundational documents. In fact, in the book, I talk about a 4,000-year-old will found in Egypt of an old lady that disinherits 4 of her kids because they didn't take care of her in her old age. The will has been the most foundational document in planning for when you pass since the beginning of what we know of time. It goes way back. And so the question is, do you need a trust? That's really the question, is do we add on this additional document? And then it's just understanding what that document actually does. Trusts are commonly misunderstood. Anytime you separate the legal interest from the beneficial interest in property, you create a trust. People accidentally create trust all the time. They write up a document and they'll say, you're in charge of handling this for this person. Well, you just created a trust when you did that. Because of the last basically pretty much 1,000 years of trust history, they have flourished into doing thousands of different things. And sometimes they're sold as the most magical thing. You're going to avoid taxes, some kind of magical unicorn that somehow the federal government hasn't figured out yet how to stop people from committing tax fraud. To like, oh, someone's never going to be able to get your assets. Well, there are certain things that can be done and certain things that can't be done, but you're just dividing those interests. And you can do some pretty cool things when you do that, especially in business. For example, last week, I got a call. The business owner died. He was on everything. There were 4 major projects being run, and daughter comes in and is like, what do I do? Well, we had to file a temporary emergency probate, but there's huge problems now because no planning was done. Nothing was put into place. And so he spent his whole life building this little empire for his kids that his daughter is dealing with the issue of trying to maintain this valuable business now that he's gone. And he took no time to plan it out. She was hoping last week she was going to save it. She's not so optimistic now this week because people now found out he's passed and they're like, where's my money? And she's like, I don't have access to it right now. There's so many issues that are going on. And so she's now questioning of, do I want to deal with this?
Okay, so a couple clarifications for the listener. So first of all, this is maybe the first question I've ever heard tossed out at an attorney, that there was a firm yes, maybe even a heck yes. Usually we get a different answer. So let me just reiterate for everybody. We heard, do you need a will? Yes. We didn't hear it depends. We heard yes. We didn't hear it depends on if you die. We know that one. So yes, we got a nice firm answer, folks. Listen to that. We might get invoiced for it later, but all I know is we got a firm yes. And then the depends part came in at trust, or it depends on type of trust, right? Yeah. So that was a great example. You also had said, so just again, for point of clarification, you said this guy was on it, but you didn't mean he planned. He didn't have it figured out ahead of time. He didn't work with you previously.
Nothing, like most people.
Absolutely. Nothing. Yes. Okay. So another mistake. I think we're going to file this as mistake number 3 on this podcast. This is great. Okay. So if you could speak to business owners today, what actions do they need to take? Like when everything's good, when everything's rosy, here's the things to just get off your plate.
So actually the book, I start this off to explain this through, I like history. So I like going back through history, and it's through the 5 good emperors of Rome. So when Rome's transferred from being a republic to an empire around the time of Christ, I guess you can put it that way, there were 5 good emperors in a row. All 5 of them were adopted. They were not the biological son of the emperor. The last of those 5 is famous still to this day. He's one of the greatest leaders of all time, Marcus Aurelius. And Marcus Aurelius ends that tradition, and he puts his son Commodus in charge. Even though his advisors told him Commodus is not ready to run an empire. He is not who you think he is. And Marcus was like, but I hope. So Marcus made the biggest mistake. That was the beginning of the downfall of the Roman Empire at that point. Commodus was a horrible emperor. You're building your small little empire, and people go, I'll just put my kid in charge. I was watching a podcast once, very successful individual. He runs a very large investment firm that consults, and he goes, I'm building this so someday my son can run this. And there was like 20 guys that were on that call, all that work for him. I'm sure they all make like $1 million a year. And if I was every one of those guys, I would have gone, we're going to have to deal with your son once you're gone running this organization. That is usually one of the biggest discussions I have to have with people, is understanding that concept that, hey, you have this business that you formed. Mary really runs your business, but you're going to put your son in charge of everything. He doesn't know anything. He doesn't know how anything functions. How are we going to make that work? We can separate out duties and we can do different things, but having that conversation with people is, don't make those mistakes of just putting kids in charge because they're your kid. I know it's ingrained biologically in us to do that. I'm building this for my family. Well, you can build something for your family, but it doesn't mean you have to put them in charge of it.
I call it the cast of characters. We're getting to write your movie of what's going to happen after you're gone. Who's our cast of characters and what roles are they going to have in the movie? What are we going to watch happen as this all unfolds, right?
Exactly. And then the deeper conversation usually I have with somebody on that is like, who relies on you right now? Like, who are the people that if you're gone are going to be in a hard situation? If you're a business owner, that's beyond family. You got employees, and I've taken personal responsibility going, hey, a lot of things rely on me being here. If I'm not here, I made sure I have a life insurance policy that pays into my companies. One, to help out the employees and everybody if they decide to transfer out, if it doesn't work out, but to keep the functionality of that business happening. You've developed a dependency on you. How are you going to make sure that either one, they can be weaned off of that dependency, or figuring out the best way to take care of them for the rest of their life? Because I do elder law, which is a lot in this area. And about 20% of everybody under the age of 18 right now has a disability. That's shocking high number. And this is almost everybody I have coming in now has grandkid, somebody that has a disability that needs help. Plus on the other side, the whole equation here, we have an aging population. Everybody's dealing with parents, grandparents, and you think inflation was hard on you. You can work. Your wages increased with that inflation. They didn't increase proportionately for the elderly. They went from, spending $600 or $700 on a rent payment to now being told it's $2,000 and their social security is $1,700 a month.
I just had the conversation today that even in certain areas, people who paid $100,000 for their home 10 years ago, 20 years ago, and have it paid off now are now paying, $500,000-$600,000 a month in real estate taxes because the value of their home has increased. And that was never in their budget when they took their retirement, right? That was never allotted for, let alone all the other expenses with inflation and cost of living increases that you're talking about. It is an interesting two-edged sword that we're not talking about the elderly and where they live. How do they live? How do they afford to live? Yeah, agreed.
Yeah. And then the fact that we haven't addressed the issue of why are all these kids becoming disabled? So if things are going to keep trending, it's going to keep going up. So you're going to have more and more disabled kids dealing with the fact that we have more and more elderly people that are struggling, really, really struggling. People need to be kind of aware of this. Parents have kind of pride. If you know your parents don't have a lot of money, you might want to check in on them. Make sure that they're doing okay, because they might not be telling you, hey, we didn't expect our taxes to go up.
Right.
Barely living on our budget. And so they're, cutting out because they don't want to be a burden to their children. And, you have to kind of take the initiative to go, okay, what's going on here, and figure things out. But the idea that you have to take this time and plan things out is becoming more and more important. It's like converging on all these problems. You have people losing their jobs like crazy now and will be because of AI. It's going to be a transition phase of people trying to figure that out. Plus, we have all these other things going on at the same time. It was about 3 months ago. I sat down. I was like, okay, I'm having all these people come in. I have nothing to tell them. Like, what do you do? So I went back to the drawing board and said, well, what's some ideas that we can come up with? Well, one was we started trying to teach people about multi-generational living. In America, we don't really do that. You have your house, I have my house, kids have their house, and telling people, hey, the reality is other people in other countries all live together because that's how things just have to be. We're actually taking our garage and converting it into a mother-in-law suite right now for my kids. But the idea was, hey, later on, one of our parents might need a place and we're going to have a place for them.
And there's a ripple effect. And I think you hit the nail on the head earlier on to just bring it back a little more full circle. When you started talking about entrepreneurs and business owners, when you said that, you're basically counseling them on business advice, like fundamental, like jobs, duties, roles, responsibilities. And I think that's what's interesting about the role as an estate planning attorney, that nowadays estate's almost a misnomer. Like we always used to say the word life planning because it's really about what's happening right now in your life. And really what that means nowadays is that I have a couple friends of mine who practice and they do a will and trust and they kind of do some very cut and dry kind of stuff, I'll just say. And then I have some that do very complex stuff with more complex financials. And then there's guys, and I will, maybe lump myself in possibly with you, where if you're going to deal with business owners, you need a fundamental understanding of buy-sell agreements. You need a fundamental understanding of corporate law, corporate structure. You need to also understand real estate law. And how do these all impact estate planning and planning out all this? Because all of it can be dealt with different ways. I always use the analogy as, remember those little plastic puzzles where you move the piece? There's always an empty piece. There always is a potential for an empty spot. We're going to do the best job we can. But how do we move the assets around? And the asset being, the membership or the corporate shares of a business, right? All of that. And I think you've kind of given us a good picture to understand that you need to make sure you're getting good counsel and advice from somebody, if you do own a business, that understands business law, right? If you do own a real estate portfolio that understands real estate more than just, your homestead and slapping that into a trust. I think there's these components. And let me ask you this then, going back to the book, does the book kind of give you more of, as you stated, history and then some broad advice for entertainment purposes only, like I threw that in there, and educational purposes only, right? Does it do that? Or does it kind of help guide some of these, like if I do own a business, what are the things I should be looking at? If I do own a real estate portfolio, what are the things I should be looking at?
So I do all three. I usually try to tell a story, historical or ones that I have to change up the client's names and their situation enough that it's not that person, but I take their story and then I apply it. Oh, this is the ideas of why you should be doing it. But the focus of the book was on the reasons why you do a trust and in those situations of how we plan and how you figure those things out. But really, like Matt is a perfect example of that type of person that you want to be handling. Matt, do you do life planning?
Yeah.
Because you're creative. I deal with so many times, I just get boilerplate stuff from people. And then I talk to them and it was like no planning actually happened.
Right.
It was like he generated a bunch of documents for you. Well, someone needed to sit down and talk to you through everything of what's going on. You're the exact type of person people should be looking for when you're trying to get help. A lot of people just need boilerplate stuff. Okay, you just need that much documents. Nothing complex here. You have a couple, all their kids are together. We don't have any issues. No businesses are owned. We're just transferring assets. But when you're a business owner, no, you got to think this through. There are so many things that could be done and go wrong. I try to help as many people as I can. So I get a broad range from wealthy people to people who have nothing. I don't want to be that guy that's like, oh, I just want to deal with people who have money. Like I want to take someone who doesn't have anything and go, okay, how can I help and restructure this situation? I think you're like exactly the type. Maybe it's entrepreneurs and maybe that's like entrepreneur lawyers are the best at doing this because we're like, we're constantly trying to create some new idea of like, how do you do this versus.
I never met a second one until today. So there's the two. So they
you
really
got
help you in Indiana and Texas, folks.
Exactly.
There we got two.
Yeah.
We can find
Taylor and I are enjoying
48 more.
Taylor and I are actually developing our own association for attorneys.
Oh, no, I'm making a little mastermind you can buy in. We give you the
that's
scale.
right. So
okay?
Nicole owns
we
our
help you with
mastermind.
your virtual assistant so we don't have to hear this anymore.
Yes, exactly. Nicole, that's fine. You know what? The association and mastermind is not a law firm, so you could own it with us. So there you go.
Thank you. I was going to say I need to check with my attorney, make sure I can own that. Yeah. Okay.
Exactly.
Good. Oh my gosh.
The book does cover those topics, though, right?
Yeah.
Just so we bring it all full circle. Great.
Okay.
Okay.
And how we can avoid taxes.
Somebody wants to know a little bit about them.
The best that we can without ending up in jail. Yes.
Of course. Yes, yes.
Hey there, busy movers and shakers. I get it. You're out there conquering the business world, hustling day in, day out. Well, guess what? We've got something to amplify your efforts, something that's about to make your entrepreneurial journey even more exciting. Introducing our podcast production services, your ticket to sharing your knowledge and stories without breaking a sweat. We know your time is gold. That's why our team of podcast pros will take the reins, handle all of the behind the scenes stuff. From brainstorming fun topics, introducing you to incredible guests, polishing up those episodes, repurposing your content so you can share among lots of platforms. We're here to turn your ideas into a podcast that's as easygoing as your favorite chat over coffee. Imagine establishing your expertise and your authority, making connections all across the globe in just minutes a month. And the fun doesn't end there. Our data-savvy approach gives you insights that will help you fine-tune your content and connect with your audience even better than before. So join forces with a crew that's as enthusiastic about your podcast as you are about your business, the SmartCookie Media crew. Let your voice resonate, your stories inspire, and your ideas spread like wildfire. Level up your personal brand through the magic of podcasting, whether you choose audio only or video too. Are you ready to dive into podcasting? Your journey to share your knowledge starts right here because it's your voice, your podcast with our expertise. SmartCookie Media, turning your stories into conversations.
Just real quick, can I ask you this? Because you mentioned it before, the misnomers about trust. Now, I know this question. So you said before, it's not necessarily going to be this end all be all tax avoidance, correct?
Yes.
Like it's not going to shield you from federal government or state government. What about with respect to litigation? Because some of the business owners listening or people involved in business have, I think, a misnomer of asset protection and utilizing trust. From a general everyday, I own a small business, family held business. I want to create a trust and I want to make sure that that trust is going to protect it so no one could ever come take the house from my kids, take the business away from my kids. Is a trust going to do that?
So I'm going to speak for Texas because
Okay.
I want to be very careful. In the state of Texas, no, we don't allow you to take all your assets, put it into a trust and protect yourself from liability because we offer other ways of doing that. They don't let you protect everything, but like in the state of Texas, your house is already protected. But there was an attempt to try to get a law passed to allow trusts like this to be created in Texas that didn't pass. But a lot of times when I'm talking to people, I go through with them, what do we already protect by law? State of Texas, your IRA, your 401k is protected. We don't allow garnishment of wages. Your annuities of life insurance protected. Your house. And they're like, well, I want to do this asset protection trust. And I'm like, well, you're talking about $20,000, $30,000 that you're trying to protect. But this is going to cost you money.
Yeah, many states don't have a homestead exemption. I could speak to Indiana, where I practice out of. Even in bankruptcy, there's only a certain dollar amount allotted. And so that's always been one of the fundamental questions I think that people have almost a misnomer on that. If I create this trust, because I'm reading Taylor's book, it's teaching me about trust, that means everything's just magically protected if I put it into the trust.
It's not like a force field with a magic
No,
wand?
there's no.
Okay.
No. So just to clarify then, it's not a magic force field necessarily. You have to look at jurisdiction, where the company operates out of. There's things that you can look to, but it's not an end all be all. Am I correct?
Exactly. Yes. There are great tricks that are out there that attorneys use to make litigators' lives miserable. I've sued enough to know that, you can really make it very difficult on a litigator that they just want to give up. And so there are very good ideas that are out there that attorneys use that they've kind of trademarked or different things like that to make their businesses better protected, to make their trusts more difficult to get to assets. You can't do that for your kids, though. We allow you to put money in trust to protect from a lot of things for your children. So I have that conversation like, you can create trust that's yours. And when you pass away, your kids will get certain protections.
Yep.
But you yourself just putting your assets there and no one can sue you. No, we don't allow that in the city.
Yeah, exactly.
Because I get that call all the time. This isn't going to protect all my assets. No.
Well, then what am I hiring you for? Like, right? Yeah.
Is there anything that we didn't cover you wanted us to cover?
The only thing I tell people is if you're ending up in a situation that you have a spouse that is going to go into a nursing home, go talk to an elder law attorney. That's what they do because no one knows what elder law attorneys do. And it's a horrible name, but that's what we call them.
Oh my gosh. I talk to Matt about this all the time, that the legal industry has horrible names. Nobody wants to talk about estate planning, right?
Yeah.
Like they just hear death. And
Right.
that's why when he said, well, so life planning, I was like, yeah, at least that sounds like something you actually want to talk
Yeah.
about. Change that.
Lawyers are creative folks. See, we have what's called the last will and testament,
Yeah.
and then we have the living will. So
Yeah.
last
Yes.
will, living will. We
Very
even
creative.
put the same adjectives starting with the same letters just to
Yes.
confuse people. We're just such creative folks, us lawyers, that
yeah,
we like.
that's it. Allegedly creative.
Allegedly
Yeah,
creative, exactly.
jury's still out. Okay, I can tell
Oh.
you. They'll be back quick, though, I promise. Okay, so what is one of the key lessons you've learned as an entrepreneur? Maybe it's a mantra you find yourself saying again and again.
The most valuable thing that you can do is work on yourself. You are the key to everything. If people are leaving your business, it's because you're a problem. I have experienced this multiple times in my business. You can spend all your money that you want on your business, but if you're a problem, it ain't going to work. So work on yourself constantly.
Good advice.
Okay, good. So it's not a mantra you yell throughout the office. Work on yourself, people.
No.
Work on yourself.
Oh,
Okay.
yeah,
I
that
say
one
it
is-
all day long.
Okay. I was
Taylor,
like-
you're the problem. Taylor, stop blaming other people. I'm the problem.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, so Taylor Swift wrote that just for
Oh.
Taylor. Yeah.
Taylor
Me.
wrote for Taylor?
Hi, it's
Really?
me.
Oh,
Yeah,
man. That's...
Hi, it's me.
Okay.
Taylor, how would you define your entrepreneurial success, or when do you think you've made it?
Oh man, I never feel like I make it. I always feel like I'm like in quicksand, constantly trying to like, oh, I got to fix this problem. I got to fix this problem. I got to like, so I think that's part of what makes you an entrepreneur is like you're constantly obsessed with growth.
Where do we find you? What's a link that maybe you want to send people to? Certainly those in the state of Texas or that have interest in Texas, but anybody else that wants to connect with you for any other reason or find the book, where do we go?
So the easiest one to say is my webpage is willprobateattorneys.com as an S at the end. If you're in the state of Texas, I can help you. You're outside the state of Texas, I really can't help you. I got to send you to an attorney.
We can read your book, though. We'll link the book to Amazon. Good.
Absolutely.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Taylor. Thank you for being
Yeah.
here. You've been listening to the Serial Entrepreneur Show, produced by the team here at SmartCookie Media.